If you want news and rumors that appeal, welcome to the Dusty Wheel. If you want news and rumors.
Hey, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel. I'm your host, the Innkeeper, and this is our live call-in talk show all about the Wheel of Time. Now tonight, we're about to talk about mapping the Wheel of Time with a new reader of the series, Josh Stolarz. But before we bring him into the show, I want to remind everybody, next week at this time, we have a special episode all about Robert Jordan's notes. Yes, we're going to bring in Robert Jordan's notes and talk about the work he was doing when he was writing The Dragon Reborn, the questions he was asking about where the plot was going. It's going to be amazingly interesting and fun for us. I'm going to have my friends on, Linda Taglieri, Therese. They're going to be with me here live. We'll discuss it with you, answer your questions, and talk about his thoughts. I can't wait for that one. And then the following Sunday, we're going to have Adam Whitehead, Corey Lansdell, and we're going to have Rob from Weekly Wheel News with us, and we'll be talking all about the Wheel of Time. We're going to play the Wheel of Game Time. We're going to do one of those variety shows that I know a lot of you love. I can't wait to have them here that Sunday. So that's the next two shows. We won't be here next Sunday, but we might have a little something that will premiere. But just keep up with us on social media, and we'll let you know. So now that you know that, without further ado, let me bring in my guest, Josh Stolarz. Welcome to the Dusty Wheel, Josh. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here with us. Now, before we get started, I have lots of questions for you. I want to talk all about the work you've been doing. You're, reading The Wheel of Time. But I want to remind everyone that's watching right now, Josh is only into The Wheel of Time at the Shadow Rising. So similar to our last show, please don't spoil anything in chat and asking questions beyond, let's say the Dragon Reborn. Let's keep it to the Dragon Reborn. You can mention names, don't worry too much about that, but let's try not to spoil the books for him. And for those people that are here wanting to see Josh and maybe haven't gotten that far in the book. So let's keep it as spoiler-free as possible. Okay. So that being said, Josh, let's jump into it. I think I got to know your work through somebody sharing, an image on Instagram. And I want to show the audience that first image. It was a sketch that you started doing. You had said you just started the Wheel of Time and you just felt like you needed to sketch what you were seeing with Edmonds Field and the two rivers. Mm-hmm. So do you recall, is this kind of like how you process things like reading, or do you immediately start sketching things, whatever, throughout the entire day? Is that just kind of a common thing for you, just to pull a pad of paper and start doodling?
I feel like it has been in the last couple of years. It was something that I started about 2 years ago when I first picked up Mistborn by Sanderson. I actually just decided to do the map in my own style and just have fun with it. I did it again for Robin Hobb's
Nice.
Assassins trilogy. And I came to the Wheel of Time and I saw that there were a few maps. I was initially going to do the main map, but I saw the Two Rivers map at the front. I'm like, I'm going to do this one. I usually do a lot of continent maps, so I kind of wanted to do one that was more like a regional map, a little bit more zoomed in. So,
well, it's awesome, and we're going to definitely dig into some of this. But I'm kind of curious, when did this kind of passion for art begin for you? Were you just always artistic since you were two?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you remember that first picture you ever sketched? Do you have old art from those days?
I'm sure my mom does. I don't specifically remember anything. I've always done drawing, a little bit of painting. I mentioned my mom, she's very artistic. She does painting and stained glass and stuff. So it was something that was always really encouraged throughout my childhood. So, when I was younger, I remember drawing a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog and,
Right.
things like that. And then I kind of transitioned into, I figured out how to do shading with, a pencil and stuff. And I started doing almost more realistic style renders of animals and things like that. So it's just something that I've always done. I do drawing, photography, and graphic design, just really anything creative just has a draw on me.
So tell me that. Can you remember the first map that you drew? Does that ring a bell? Like, what was the first
Mhm.
map?
It was probably Middle Earth,
Was
to be
it?
honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the classic, really got into the fantasy genre through Lord of the Rings and stuff. Um, I actually saw the movies first
Oh,
and
interesting.
then
Okay.
read the books. My wife had me watch the movies and then I read the books and really got into them. And um, I feel like I was able to better appreciate the differences rather than holding to what the book says quite so
Sure.
closely as some.
Yeah, that
So I
never
feel like
happens.
I can enjoy both of them equally. But yeah, I mean, Middle Earth was that first map that I opened up to and I started, drawing it and stuff. I don't think I actually finished the map, um, but that was probably where I started.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting that I'm going to talk about a little bit later about this kind of how you got into fantasy, and I know I can see people in chat kind of clamoring to see more of that image, those images that you came up with. So yeah, I want to jump into the second one that you did, because you started giving like a lot of body to the map, right? That first sketch, right? You had like
Okay.
lines and some text, and now you started really drawing the mountains,
Right.
and that's like the mountains are so, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just me, but the mountains are captivating to me. When I see the mountains, I'm like, that just brings the map alive to me.
Hmm.
And in that post, which was quite interesting that you posted this image that we put up on the screen, you mentioned that you had read 120 books that year before. I think that might
Yeah.
have been 2018. And then this was August of last year, and you said you had only read 40 books.
Yes.
So tell me about that. Like 120 books. Well, okay, first of all, what was your total number of books for the year? Like that's what I'm curious about. Like last year, do you remember how many books you ended up reading?
Last year, I
Yeah.
think it was somewhere in the 80s.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's amazing because I tell people all the time I'm a reader,
Hmm.
and I honestly can't tell you the last time that I really. I mean, the last year that I read 5 books, I
Hmm.
can't tell you that. Like that's 80 books. What can you tell us, like what stood out for you, let's say last year in the 80 books? Were there any kind of standout titles, ones that just kind of come to mind as like your favorites?
Hmm. Um, well, I think last year was when I read the Stormlight Archives for the first time. It might have been last year. I can't remember. And I actually read each book twice.
Oh, okay.
I did like Words of Radiance back to back because I actually read it and then immediately listened to the audiobook. So I don't know, but
Yeah. I feel like that
that
counts
would
like 10,
really
that's like 10 books. Like,
right, right. um, yeah,
so,
I would have to look at my list.
so Words of Radiance was just kind of your standout, Brandon. What is it about
Mhm.
Brandon's writing that is compelling for you? I know you had mentioned, I've read a little bit about you, and
Mhm.
know that you mentioned that your brother-in-law kind of recommended Mistborn to you.
Yep.
What is it about Brandon's books that you kind of just stand out to you? That why do you like them?
I think I think the biggest thing is the plot for me. I like the characters, the setting is good, but I really like his plots. I like the mystery that is kind of teased throughout the whole book, the whole series. It makes me ask questions and wonder, and um, yeah, to me that I love the endings. I've
Yeah.
I've read a lot of books where I get to the ending and I'm like, and it's over. Okay. Um,
How?
and I kind of got disillusioned with fantasy for a number of years until that time that my brother-in-law recommended Mistborn to me, and mainly because I felt like a lot of it was just too similar. the endings weren't that great. So I picked it up, and the ending of the book just was killer. And that was the first book. And it felt like I could enjoy the first book as just a complete book rather than I have to read everything else in order to enjoy this. So I think that that's what stood out for me the most.
Do you find the same thing with the Wheel of Time? Do you find that same? Do you like the endings? Have the endings for these first three books been similar in fashion to a
The,
kind of a Sanderson ending?
the endings are okay.
Okay.
I like that they wrap up. I've heard other reviewers say this as well, but it's like the three books felt too similar in the ending. Kind of similar beats and stuff with ringing the bells on and such. But
right.
I do like the kind of like avalanche that leads up to the endings. The momentum really does pick up at the end, which is nice. So
Yeah, the one of the fans here did have a question about, as you're reading something like in Stormlight Archive, what location have you come across so far you're most interested in sketching? Has there been one that's kind of stood out to you?
I can't remember the name of the location. There's too many locations in Stormlight Archive.
That's true. Yeah. That's a good point.
It's the one where Kaladin sees it in like one of his visions, and it's like gouges in the ground. These like massive gouges in the ground. I find that really visually compelling, and it stands out to me. So I kind of want to draw that at some point.
Yeah. I'm sure everyone watching would love you too. I know there's a lot of Sanderson fans among Wheel of Time fans for sure. Now I want to jump to this third image of your drawing that you did of the Wheel of Time of the Two Rivers area. It's the one of the Waterwood and the Mire. And I noticed in that one, I read a lot of the comments and I like this part. You talk to your audience on Instagram as far as like, this is the work I'm doing. And this one you mentioned your daughter who sat down next to you and wanted you to read her The Wheel of Time or The Eye of the World. And you said something like this. You had mentioned that this maybe wasn't the most appropriate book for a young reader. And you asked everyone, where did you start as a fantasy reader?
Right.
I'm kind of curious about this aspect of your work. This creative work you're doing is part of the sharing on Instagram. Is part of the love of it just interacting with fans and with your followers? Because it seems like there's an important kind of question. Like I'm sitting there going like, this is a great question. I want to stop and answer it. The map is cool, but I want to answer this question. Have you found that part of Instagram and your interaction with followers like engaging for you?
Oh yeah, I think that's probably my favorite aspect of Instagram. Like you said, it's fun to share the images. It's fun to get likes, but I mean, that only lasts for so long. And I've kind of been doing the Instagram thing consistently for about 2 years now. And it's just amazing the different people that I've gotten to meet and interact with, and many of whom I would genuinely consider friends, even though we've only ever chatted on Instagram and such. So
right.
I was also struck by how tight knit the mapping community is. People are very welcoming, very helpful. It's a really cool community to be a part of.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe this is just one of those things you're just ignorant of. I didn't know there was like a mapping community.
Right.
But I saw a lot of comments when you posted about us doing this live stream tonight of other individuals that, they had some kind of map name in their name and realized that this community was much larger than I imagined. And by the way, those of you that are watching from Twitter, Facebook, really appreciate you watching with us. As always, appreciate everyone that's in live chat with us. Glad you came for us live here. If you don't mind, like the video so other fans of Wheel of Time know that this is happening. We really appreciate that. And if you happen to enjoy interviews and content like this, we'd love for you to subscribe to us, but you don't have to. Just enjoy the interview. But yeah, that aspect, I think, on social media, especially with the Wheel of Time community, is something that I think is very similar, very engaging from a content creator perspective. We're not maybe creating maps, but I've noticed all the content creators are very warm and welcoming and want to see everyone succeed and do well and create really compelling content. And that was one aspect that I liked. You asked your audience, when you were doing the mountains,
Mhm.
You ask them stylistically if they liked one or the other,
Mhm.
kind of mountain styles.
Mhm.
Is that kind of an engagement thing that you like to do? Do you actually kind of, is it when you are in the middle of making a decision, you just don't really lean one way or the other? Or is it just kind of a curiosity for what do they like versus what I'm going to choose?
Yeah, I think I do genuinely like getting the feedback, just because I think as an artist, whenever you figure out a new technique or a new style, you're really enthusiastic about it. Even if it's not the best style, you're just excited that you figured it out, so you want to use it. Um, but that means your opinion is somewhat swayed. So it's helpful to get some outside feedback to hear genuinely what people prefer. So.
Yeah, it was interesting. I almost one of the other mountain style. It's one of those where I liked them both, and I almost I almost wanted you to like, hey, just apply them both and let me choose once I see the larger, once I see everything. It was one of those where I couldn't even pick between the two. They were both really interesting.
Mhm.
Uh, we have a question here in chat. Jordan Newman asked, "What program are you drawing with?" Do you want to talk a little bit about how you go about doing work like this map that you did for the Two Rivers?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, primarily now I do all my drawing in the Procreate app. When I first started, I was in Photoshop, but then I ended up making the switch to getting an iPad, and I wasn't a Mac guy, so it was a big jump for me. But I finally broke down and got one, and I started using the Procreate app, and the that's pretty much exclusively what I draw in now. It's just so comfortable to use. The other thing that I really like about it is being able to use the iPad. It's so portable. So I can be sitting on the couch and, with the family and drawing or something like that. And I don't have to go to my desk, or if I'm doing traditional art, set up everything, hope that the kids don't, get into it, whatever it may be. But
Yeah, yeah,
so.
yeah. I noticed you have almost I don't know what you call them, like toolkits that people
Brush
can
packs.
brush packs. There
Mm-hmm.
we go. Yeah, some really cool ones. My daughter loves to draw. She actually I think is also using Procreate, and I was showing
Oh,
her some
cool.
of your work, and she's like, "Oh my gosh!" Ask him. She wanted to know this. How big is the canvas that you worked on for the Two Rivers? Like for example, is
I believe it's 18 by 24.
18 by 24. Okay, I'll tell her. She'll be really excited that she got that. She was very fascinated as we were looking at the brush packs. I think you call them. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
those are really cool. I recommend anyone that's watching now that has not seen this, go check out Josh's Instagram. I think we also in the description below have a link to his website. You can get all the information there. I think you can actually even see his work there and learn about what he's doing. So make sure to check those out after the show. You will thank me just because it's a lot of fun. I want to spend the time, if that makes sense. Like
Mm-hmm.
you make me want to try it out. And even though I
Good.
don't think I
That
have the
that's
skill,
the
I,
goal.
I feel I feel the pull to try to do it. So I
Good.
appreciate that.
Good.
This
That's always good to hear.
yeah, no, it's I saw I can't remember if it was maybe Michael Java, his last name, at least here
Mm-hmm.
on the user. He said he's become a good friend of yours on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I think it's a lot of fun to get to know content creators, and you almost just like you said, you're learning from each other and you're polling for each other, and so it's nice to see some of your friends here too in chat today.
Cool. Cool.
I want to jump onto this next part of the Two Rivers map. It was this fourth step here. We'll finally get to Edmonds Field. For those of you that are watching, Wheel of Time fans, you're like, show me Edmonds Field. And so it's just a close up you did, and a cool icon that you created for it. And you mentioned this one along with the fact that you were moving on to the Great Hunt in your comments,
Mm-hmm.
and you gave the Eye of the World a 7 out of 10. And I kind of wanted to ask you, like, what does a 7 out of 10 mean to you when you rate that? You've read obviously a lot of books.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean it's compelling enough to move on? Clearly, you started reading more. What was it that you liked about The Eye of the World?
Well, and I will say that for me, a 7 out of 10 is good. I'm
Okay.
not the
Yeah.
person that I don't know that I would rate any book a 10.
Okay.
You know, so 7 out of 10 is definitely good. I really, I really was enjoying the plot. I feel like the plot was really bringing me in. I was curious to see where things were going. I really enjoyed the setting. I love the depth of the world building. I love when I can pick up a book and it feels like everything is well thought out. So it definitely set me up to want to continue the series, especially with how massive of a series it is. It's like, oh man, there's just so much more to find and discover. So
Right. Yeah, I think I'm with you there. With the Eye of the World, it's not really in my top 5 for all the Wheel of Time books, but it's an enjoyable book, right? To me, it's like it's that ramp into what I think is really Robert Jordan's masterpiece, and I think it ramps people up really well. I've noticed the people that have stopped at the Eye of the World, and I was like, no, you didn't understand. Like you were on your way. That wasn't the end. That was just the beginning. Or
so that was me, probably 13 years ago.
Oh, really? Okay.
I actually read Eye of the World about 13 years ago. Again, when I was first kind of getting into fantasy and stuff, I was thinking about it, and it's like I think that it was ill-timed when I read it. I classic came to fantasy through Lord of the Rings and stuff, and then sure. I think I went to R.A. Salvatore, and then I went to Dragonlance, and then I think that's about when I hit the Wheel of Time, and there was a little bit too much repeats of Tolkien-esque references, sure. Especially since there's so many in the other 2 series that I mentioned as well. So I think that I hit it, and I was like, it's pretty good. I don't really feel the need to continue. The ending was confusing.
That's true.
It's like, what is happening? But then, when I went back and read it, I read it more carefully because I remembered that the ending confused me. And it was like, okay, there's a lot of good action and stuff going on here. And now that I'm paying a little bit closer attention, I think the first time I read it on audio, or I listened to it on audiobook.
Yeah.
So it's easier to miss things.
Yeah, there are. That's a really interesting point of view. I always forget about the end of the Eye of the World. Like I understand it now, but that's just because I've been reading it and for a long time. So, and I absolutely, and I've heard that from a lot of new readers, that the Eye of the World is kind of a thing that happens and it's not really well explained. And what's nice is, again, I think we talked briefly about this. There's a little mystery there of like what just happened, and but I'm kind of curious because I know you've moved on to The Great Hunt. You've read The Dragon Reborn. Are they still kind of all falling into that same kind of place for you, like in that 7 out of 10 range, or how did you feel about those 2 books?
I would put, I'd probably put Dragon Reborn in that 7 range. I would probably kick The Great Hunt up to an 8 or a 9. That one was the standout one for me. I read The Eye of the World, and I mean, we all know there's a lot of Tolkien references, and I know that he did it intentionally and stuff. But then once I started The Great Hunt and some things started happening, I was like, oh, he's really taking ownership of this series, and he's going new directions. He's got some pretty brutal visuals.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh wow, this ramped up quickly, and I really like the it was almost like reading a thriller. It just had so much going on that you just kind of kept I couldn't stop reading. I blasted through that book in like a week or something. So
yeah, I think that experience certainly is one of the best books. We're doing a live adaptation right now, and it's just reminding me just how much there is. And like you said, it is, each one of the books kind of has a different feel to it, and that a thriller is a great way to explain that book. For anyone that's new to the books, still watching us, don't stop at the Eye of the World. I think just read through The Great Hunt. To me, if you've gotten to the end of The Great Hunt and it's still not your thing, okay, maybe stop then. But give The Great Hunt a try. Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that, and I would agree with that. 7, 9, 7. Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense for The Dragon Reborn. To me, I know you just started Shadow Rising. I'm kind of curious. When you get to the end, I want to know. I would imagine it's in. Well, for me, it was kind of more that it's that 9 range again. So I'm kind of wondering if that's going to ramp up for you after The Dragon Reborn.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I'm only 200 pages in, and it's good so far. I'm enjoying it so far.
Yeah.
I know it's definitely a fan favorite. So when I think I posted a picture on my Instagram that I was starting it, and I got a bunch of direct messages, just all excited that I was starting the book. It's a really cool community that the Wheel of Time has, and I feel like that's part of what has also kept me going, caused me to actually finish the map, because sometimes you start projects and you don't finish them and stuff. But
Right.
but the community around Wheel of Time is just so encouraging and welcoming that it's just really motivating to keep going.
Yeah, we were talking about this recently in another interview, which was there's some experience. We just love, the community loves when new readers come in,
Hmm.
and everyone just wants you to get to those certain points in certain books. Like I'm telling you right now, like The Shadow Rising, it's a really interesting, whether or not you like it or not. That's I think the excitement and the appeal of new readers. So yeah, that's good to hear that you still feel that the community is very welcoming. That's great to hear.
Hmm.
Now I've seen some questions show up in chat, and before we move on, I want to ask some of those. Uh, Andrew's wondering, do you draw battles or do you just draw kind of more geography, more kind of map stuff? Or have you tried kind
Like
of,
battle maps.
or just doing like, I think he means more like a first person view, like in people in a battle versus just doing a map itself.
Um, I haven't done it a whole lot. Um, I feel like that's a direction that I would like to move, but I feel like I need to improve my skill in drawing people in particular.
Yeah.
Um, People drawing is always a challenge, but I do have some classes that I have lined up that I'm going to be watching. So that is a direction I would like to move.
Nice. And to the question, I mean, let's jump back to that battle maps themselves. Have you gone down that road also? Because Andrew might have been asking that question. So have
Sure.
you done one of those?
Not really. I came to the whole fantasy mapping and stuff through the books. I've never really been an RPG battle map type of guy. Just not that there's anything wrong with it. Just haven't had the right circle of friends probably around me to get me into it. So
Right.
my focus is definitely on the books and even historical maps. Those interest me too. So
Okay, that's very cool. Yeah, thanks for answering those. And now this next, as we're progressing in building the map out, this one I wanted to focus on was the icons that you made
mm,
while you were doing the Two Rivers map.
mm,
So this fifth image is really, I loved these icons. I love. And you asked the people that you asked your followers. You said, "Okay, I have these four. Do you have a favorite?" So I want to ask you,
mm-hmm.
of these four icons you created, do you have a favorite between Devon Ride, Terran Ferry, Watch Hill, and Edmonds Field?
I, I like all of them for some of the elements that I was able to bring in. Terran Ferry is definitely my favorite.
Terran Ferry is your favorite?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I think that
I'm
it's the boldest one. It's a little bit got a little bit more iconic silhouette in my opinion. So,
yeah. So I don't know what it is. Watch Hill.
mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's just the hill. It could just be simply that
Mm-hmm.
my brain is connecting like hill to a hill I see,
Mm-hmm.
but that one is really appealing to me. I'm kind of curious. I want to ping everybody that's either watching us on Twitter, on Facebook, or is in chat with us. Of those four that you just saw on the screen, which is your favorite? I'd love to see. Tell us in chat which of the four icons is your favorite. Let's answer Josh's question here. I'm kind of curious if we'll see any if any majority rules here if it comes up. Maybe everyone will like the Terran Ferry too. Uh, Now, I'm kind of curious about that though. How often do you find yourself agreeing with the audience, like your followers, when you ask them questions? Do you just get a wide variety, or is it kind of everyone is finding the same thing appealing? Like, what do you find when you ask questions like that?
Boy, it depends. It really depends on what the question is and stuff. And you brought it up before. I really do enjoy engaging with the community and stuff. So anytime I can ask a question, I usually try to. And try to respond to all the comments and stuff because it's just fun to have conversations with like-minded people. Um, there's been a few things that I've posted that surprised me. I'm trying to think. I think there was a style of coastlines that I posted at one point and asked which they prefer, and it was not what I was expecting. They picked the opposite of my expectations. So it is always interesting. Usually one takes the day pretty clearly.
Hmm.
It's usually not too close, I've noticed, but
Now, and do you feel like that's is it? And I know I've done a lot of design work on
mhm.
graphic design and as far as building web applications and such, and I know I often have a favorite. Right, I'm showing three
Oh yeah,
samples of something,
oh yeah.
and do you ever find yourself kind of like spending a lot of time on the favorite and not so much, or do you feel like no, I have to give both of these, even though I'm already kind of have this appeal to one side, I'm going to put as much time in the other because I really want to know and really want to put the effort, or do you just kind of follow a particular thread, like I like this one and I'm going to put more time and effort into it?
Right. I mean, so with, icon design or logo design, because I do have a little bit of that in my background too. I mean, this, some of them just come together
Yeah.
very quickly. Yeah. It's funny that you actually mentioned Watch Hill, because that one was definitely the easiest one for me to draw.
Okay.
That one took, I don't know specifically, but it took me next to no time compared to some of the other ones. Maybe I'm attached to Terran Ferry because that one probably took me the longest.
Right.
So I think you spend the most time on your favorite.
Right.
And then I often find that the simple one is the one that people tend to latch onto. So
yeah, it's a really interesting. It's always an interesting experience as a designer, sharing those things with others to see, and then hearing kind of what they find to be preferences or not. By the way, I think I saw Terran Ferry. I don't know if they're biased because you're the guest and you liked it. I don't want to say that that's, but Terran Ferry, you spent a long time on it, and it shows a lot of people loved.
Cool.
In the chat, they were showing that they really liked Terran Ferry a lot. So let's check out this next piece of the map that you did, which is one of my favorite pieces, which is the compass. It's number 6 here. This was a lot of fun to see the whole serpent eating the tail aspect, the symbolism there of the great serpent, and perfectly fitting in with the wheel. And I kind of wondered on this, was this an idea that just popped into your head immediately when you thought about making the compass? Had you drawn it one way and then you're like, wait, I need to add this aspect to it? Or was the symbolism just immediately there for you as a designer?
I kind of feel like the symbolism was immediately there. I mean, there's so much mention of the serpent eating its own tail and stuff with the rings and stuff throughout the books that I like to come up with a unique compass design when I can. So I feel like it was probably something that was in the back of my head as I was reading and thought, oh, that could actually work on a design like that. So
yeah, it's a really, it's one of those simple things. It's not very elaborate. It's just really, it's this aspect of the symbolism of the book that just kind of really sets into like, this is a map of the Wheel of Time. Is that important to you as you consider drawing out a map like this? Do you go looking for symbolism to add, or is it just in the process of reading the book and something catches you and you just remember it and then include it? Or are you purposely trying to attach that symbolism?
I always want to attach the symbolism as much as possible. I always like to draw a map in such a way that it feels like it's a relic from the world.
Okay.
It's a piece of the world. So when you can include those types of little details like that just is icing on the cake to me. I'm always looking for opportunities to do stuff like that. So
yeah, no, and Wheel of Time has a lot of them, and that's a really nice twist. I like that that's kind of what you're looking to do, that you want it to be a relic. That's a really cool way to think about your process. Corey, by the way, Corey Lansdell in chat had a question. He asked, do you have specific inspirations in terms of cartographers or map makers that have, been part of your almost mentoring process, if you will, into this?
Sure. Like I said, there's actually a pretty robust community of cartographers that are out there. A lot of them hang out on Cartographers Guild, which is a website and a forum that I've been a member of for a while. I haven't posted actively, or I've only recently started posting actively. So it's fun to just take inspiration from those individuals. I don't know that there's necessarily one specific person that I'm most inspired by, but I really appreciate Misty B. Her work is gorgeous. Stephen Johnson, I believe is his name. He also does just really amazing maps and stuff. Fantastic maps. That's Jonathan Roberts. He does some amazing work and stuff. He was probably the first one that I really discovered his work and connected with. So,
Yeah, I need to grab those from you afterwards.
Yeah,
I'd love to look them up. I'd love to, maybe afterwards I'll get them from you and I'll post in social media kind of some of these because I'd love to see some of this work. That's a great question. Thanks, Corey, for that, and thanks for taking a moment and answering that one. Now, I want to finally show everyone. You put up an image after it was done. You put a bookmark up there. It's a seventh image that we have here, and it was the two rivers map. You can finally see the whole thing with the eye of the world, and it's extremely beautiful. And I kind of wondered. This made me wonder: are there other maps in the Wheel of Time? Like, as you've been reading, have you said to yourself, like, "Oh, I'd really like to do this later. I'd like to come back to this." Is there something that's kind of inspired you that way?
Well, I obviously want to do the main map at some point. I mean, to be fair, I have it started. I have the mountains and the forests and the rivers, and that's actually all done. What has hung me up is I want to do what I did on the Two Rivers map with the cities and do icons for the different cities, because that's just an extra, again, a way to get little details from the book and stuff into the map. The problem is I am allergic to spoilers. I do not like spoilers. I like to just go with the flow of the story and not learn anything. And I started to work on a few of the icons, and I was starting to hit spoilers.
Yeah.
Nothing, ruined it for me, but I can tell. So that one's kind of on the back burner. Apparently until I finish the series, or I've actually,
yeah, it's be tough.
I've actually had a couple of the fans offer to like give me descriptions of the cities,
right,
that I don't have to end up Googling.
That's a better idea.
Yeah. So I mean, that might be a possibility. I do actually really want to do Camelin. It's kind of the main city that you see in that initially. So I would really like to do Camelin.
Yeah, so those of you that are watching out there, if you want to help this process along, you just need to go get a summary of all of the cities and the symbolism of those cities and the colors and all those things. And we might be able to get this before you finish the books,
right?
Because the Wheel of Time is a significantly long series, so you're on book 4.
Yes.
But yeah, I did notice you started the large map. Camelin, of course, we're from the Dusty Wheel here. We'd love to see you do that map, But yeah, I kind of wondered at that, and now I would like to. Before I jump into this last piece, I did want to ask you how much, just generally speaking, how much time was this map? Do you have kind of an idea of how long this took to put this Two Rivers together?
I actually looked in Procreate because it does track your time. Which gives you at least a rough idea. I do have to add a little bit to it because the one thing, and this actually goes back to the previous question, I do most of my drawing in Procreate, but all the labeling and such I do in Photoshop. Procreate's really not set up well for text tools. You can't bend the text or anything like that. It's only recently you can even add text at all. But so I do actually finish it in Photoshop, and unless I'm intentionally tracking my time, which I don't think that I did, I have to just kind of come up with an estimate. Yeah. But I believe that it took me about 40 to 45 hours to do that map.
Wow. That's that's a lot of dedication, and it is beautiful. And with that in mind, I know you'd kind of tease this out to fans on Instagram and on Facebook. I saw this today and I was like, oh shoot, I want to know what this is all about. You mentioned that you had something to give to fans. So I thought I would let you kind of explain that. What is it that you wanted to give to fans this evening?
So when I finished the map, I was just blown away by the amount of people that approached me saying, where can I get a print? I want to print. Let me know when I can get a copy of it and such. And the problem was I don't have a commercial license to be able to make any profit off of selling the map. I know a lot of people still do it, but I'm not comfortable doing that. So I kind of just kept the map to myself for, the last several months and stuff. And it's like, gosh, I really wish I could, figure out, a way to give this map back to the fans, and especially with how encouraging people have been. So today I put up on my website the direct file so that everyone can download the full resolution map. And if they want to get a print of it themselves, they are more than welcome to do so. So all they have to do is go to my website, mapeffects.co, and it should be just at the top of the page. You can click through and you can download the full resolution map. And I've also actually included some, pictures behind the scenes and documented a little bit of my process and a little bit of my thinking. So if you want to read some of my thoughts that I shared while I was actually creating the map, you can do that as well.
Yeah, that's awesome, and that's extremely kind of you for the time that you put into that. I hope everyone, mapeffects.co, like I said, should be a link in the description. Go download this thing and check out kind of the work that Josh did, and of course, follow him. Well, let's take a moment. Go follow Josh on Instagram. I think you also have a Facebook page. Is that true?
I am on Facebook and YouTube. I've only got one video up on YouTube so far, but okay. I am there.
So yeah, and I don't know if I have your YouTube link in the description, so we'll add that after the show. But yeah, definitely go download that. It's extremely amazing. Yeah, people are already saying like, "Oh man, I'm gonna make this a wallpaper." Cool. Yes, this will probably. I imagine this will become many Wheel of Time fans' wallpaper on their computers. It's awesome, and we'll make sure to tweet about this after the show. Thank you so much for doing that. That's really,
of course.
That's really kind. Like again, it's you put all the time in. And yeah, I can tell a lot of people in chat are extremely grateful. So
cool.
Now this is a live call-in talk show. So for those of you that know that and have been waiting, if you want to call in, either ask Josh or myself a question about this, remember, please, no spoilers. He just expressed how much he doesn't like spoilers. He's only, nothing. Don't ask him a question about the books past The Dragon Reborn if you must. But yeah, if you'd like to give a call, it's 1-313-825-5968. That's 1-313-TALK-WATT. Give us a call and we'll put you on the show. And if you would like, again, just to say something to Josh or ask a question, that'd be great. So while some individuals call in, I had some questions kind of outside of the purview of kind of talking about that map. Mm-hmm. What is you talked about this in one of your posts, I think it was, the cover art. You mentioned kind of did affect your decision to pick up the books initially. What is it about cover art that is so polarizing? Why do you think that is the case? Because cover art comes up about the Wheel of Time all the time.
Yes. I honestly was resistant to picking up the series because of the cover art. I know a lot of people love that, 80s, 90s style of fantasy cover art. It's not my thing. I do like the new covers that are coming out better. But I judge a book by its cover.
Right.
I'm sorry. I do. And realistically, publishers that are if they're more confident in a book, usually will invest more to get a good cover on it. So there is something to it that if a book has a really good modern looking cover, there's a decent chance that it's a good book. Not always a guarantee, but right. I think that the cover is extremely important. The map as well. I mean, sometimes you see the maps and you open it up and it kind of looks like a kid scribbled in there. And it's like, oh, this was a last minute addition, wasn't it? But when I open a book and I find a map that it's like really nice and fleshed out, it's like, oh, somebody really put a lot of time and investment into this, and it does add to the story.
Yeah, for sure. And I was going to ask you about the map piece, but I do want to remind everybody, I actually saw in chat, there are some new readers in chat that I've only read through the Eye of the World. So if you're calling in, let's keep the questions only through the Eye of the World. Basically, let's not ask any spoiler or plot related questions about the books. If you are calling in, you're listening now, we'd really appreciate that. Again, to help those new readers that have been watching with us and enjoying the show tonight, and also not to spoil anything for Josh. And I did wonder about that whole question of a map. Do you look for the map at first when you open up a fantasy book? Do you go directly to the map?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And have you ever just put one down, like the cover was nice, the map was terrible, and do you walk away then? Or like, no, how is the decision?
No, I do. If it doesn't have the map, I'm disappointed, but I do still give it a chance. I'll read the back, I'll read the, first couple pages or something like that. So I do still give it a chance.
Okay.
There's a few series that I enjoy that don't have a map that makes me want to draw a map for them.
Right. Have you ever done that? Have you just kind of drawn a map for someone? I mean, just out of blue, been like, you don't have a map, and I like these books, and I'm going to draw something up, or has that not happened yet?
Not quite. I actually read Shadows for Silence by
Oh, huh. Yeah.
Anderson, and
Right.
there's not a map that I've been able to find connected with that. And I like all the details that are given of the forest and some of the locations and stuff like that. So I actually have a rough sketch of what I believe the map should look like for that book. So
Interesting. Okay,
yeah.
great. Well, someday I'm looking forward to seeing that. So we have some callers calling in. Let me bring our first caller in. His name is Duane, and he's been waiting a while, so let's bring him in. Hey, Duane, welcome to the Dusty Wheel. How you doing tonight?
Hey, man, I'm really glad, actually. I'm glad to talk to you again, actually. I'm the guy who had you see the great hunt for the white elephant party? I don't know if you remember me or not, but
What was your
yeah.
question tonight? Did you have a question about the Two Rivers topography?
Actually, I do. I'm wondering how is it to wear out the scale between the Mountains of Mist and the river and the two rivers, actual rivers within the two rivers themselves. How do you figure out the scale? Because I'm looking at it, it's amazing on Instagram.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And so, yeah, maybe do you want to talk about that a little bit, Josh? Which is, how do you go about the process of determining scale for a map?
Mm-hmm. Different maps, you get different amount of information for the scale. Sometimes you are kind of guessing. I did reference the other Two Rivers maps that I could find and use that as a basis for this map. But scale is one of those things that you do really need to pay attention to, especially if you're writing your own story. Because oftentimes I see maps and, cities are 500 miles apart and it's in a medieval setting and people are, just getting there instantaneously and they're not even using the Waze. So it's like scale is one of those things that you really do need to pay attention to it. Generally, the way I go about it is I use pixels as a guide for miles. So what I mean by that is I'll say 100 pixels is equal to 10 miles or,
Sure.
Depends on the size of the map. And I kind of base it off of that. And that's my starting place to make sure my document is all the right size and stuff. And then I scale it up to a higher resolution because then I can, just go off of that scale. But
yeah, that's a great question. I just want to tell you, Duane, thank you very much for calling in, man. Thanks for waiting and thanks for asking such a great question, man. Have a good evening. Okay.
Thanks for that.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much.
I'm so impressed, Josh.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. He was waiting. He was waiting there for a while. He knew the number. He's called in before, so I saw him waiting there for the whole show. So that was a great question. Thank you very much for that, Duane. We have a second caller. Let's bring in. He's someone we know well from previous shows. Lancer, welcome to the Dusty Wheel, or as we call him around here. Hey, Norm, how you doing?
What's up, everybody? What's up in chat? What's up? And Josh, your maps are awesome, buddy. Those are some top notch stuff, man. Top notch.
Thank you.
I got a question for you, sir. Would you be willing to, since we're not going to spoil anything? I know I joke in chat, but I would never spoil the books for you, because Bella's the creator, so we would never spoil that for you. But would you be willing to maybe create a map as to the traveling that everybody does and actually putting down like the miles they go? So, when everyone starts off from Edmonds Field and then goes off to their XYZ locations and stuff, would you like create a map showing their travels from where they went from point A to point B to point B and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great question.
I think that would be awesome. I love that kind of detail and stuff that you can get in there. That way it gives you a much better idea of how long it took them to get from point A to point B. And it just brings the map to life a little bit more and connects it to the story. I love that idea. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Lancer, as always, man, thanks for calling in and asking that question. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
No problem, you guys. You guys are awesome.
See you in chat, man. And Rick has called before. He's from Sweden. He's been staying up all night to ask this question. Let's get Rick on the line. Hey, Rick, welcome back to the Dusty Wheel. How you doing tonight?
Hi, thanks for having me again. It's been a long while now.
Yeah, I know. It's been a while since I've heard your voice. It's great to hear from you again. So without spoiling the books for Josh and those, what's your question?
Yeah, of course. But it's a couple of books in, and I was wondering about the cities. Are you interested in writing the cities like Camelin and Carane, anything like that? Because they have amazing architecture.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you think about?
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said, I started looking for some descriptions, and I started getting into spoiler territory. So if somebody would be willing to provide me with, particularly an iconic detail from the city that would read well in almost like a logo, cityscape type look. I would love to do some more illustrations of stuff like that.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
But like,
sorry, go ahead.
Camelin is, it's beautiful and kind of wavy. But Carane is more like, the straight lines and the great towers. It's kind of it's kind of in there in the books, but the straight lines of Carane versus the subtle lines of Camelin. So there's these really different strokes to these cities. So it's kind of in there in the books, right?
It's Carane. Yep, that's with the towers, right. Hey, Rick, I know you said you had a couple questions. Was there one more that you had?
No, it was more like, because I've seen these drawings of the cities, and more like from the POV sense, like you're looking up to the new city. That would be something really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Hey, Rick, thank you very much for calling in. It's great to hear your voice again, and I hope it's not this long before we speak again. Have a good evening. Or I said,
no, I watch you all the time, and it's morning. I'm gonna go to bed now. So thanks, guys.
I appreciate it, man. Hopefully we'll see you next Wednesday.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, it's always. I think it's like 3:00 in his time. It's great that he stays up, and I'm kind of curious about that. You talked about this idea of maybe doing some other cities. When you think about a city in a map, how do you kind of try to pull in those kind of iconic features? Like let's say it's got these huge, tall towers in them. From this top-down view, do you have kind of creative ways to show that on a map?
Like a tower in a top-down view?
Yeah. How do you know like the tower is, let's say, 100 feet tall versus something else?
Man, doing top-down maps are not my area of expertise. I tend to prefer the isometric ones that give you a little bit of perspective and stuff, so you can get that depth.
Yeah.
The trick with top-down is that it's really hard to show elevation and height. And you have the same issue with mountains or cliffs are a particular one that's really difficult to do. But I'd love to see the same style that you've done. I'd love to see that with Carane and those things. But like I said, you don't want to spoil a lot of things, so it's really hard to get that information that you would need to do it right. So I see some questions in chat that I thought I don't want to ignore these. There's some really good questions. What is your all-time favorite fantasy map that you've seen in a book? It's really hard not to say Middle Earth, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Just because there's so much, connection to that. And it wasn't just the map, it was the story, it was the movies. Part of what really got me into drawing at a heavy level was watching all the behind the scenes of Lord of the Rings and stuff, and seeing what they were doing in Weta Workshop and such. So I have a lot of personal connection to that map.
Yeah.
I do really like Roshar. I think that it's an interesting shape and it's pretty iconic. So I like a lot of what's going on at Roshar. But
yeah, that's I'm sure it's really difficult to try to pick something like that. But like you said, yeah, I definitely think Lord of the Rings has some of my favorites at least. I know we have another caller. His name's Greg. Let's bring Greg into the show. Hey, Greg, welcome to the Dusty Wheel tonight. How you doing?
Great. How are y'all? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you great. So, what's your question for Josh?
Well, just as a quick aside, I apologize for derailing chat. I have a passion question, but I'm not going to mention it here, as that would probably devolve again.
Yeah, good idea.
But for Josh, I'd love to know: do you like it when you get more artistic freedom with the distances, or want books where you have to dig for the details of, oh, they went this many miles this way and such as that? And also, how would you rank Wheel of Time as far as the firmness of those details compared to other books?
Sure. I do like those details because it does add a level of realism to the world to me. Again, it makes me feel like the author really thought it through and considered those things. I think from what I've seen, Wheel of Time is pretty good. I've heard that it's bad in some areas, but I haven't really necessarily encountered those myself. But
yet, right?
Yeah, right.
I've heard the rumors.
Thank you very much, Greg. Appreciate the call and the question. Have a good evening. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank y'all.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye bye. So, jumping away from the Wheel of Time for just a second, and when it comes to Brandon's books themselves, have you had a chance to meet Brandon? Do you watch his stuff? Like, how integrated are you in as far as fandom when it comes to Brandon Sanderson books as compared to the Wheel of Time?
Yeah, I'm a pretty big Brandon Sanderson fan. He brought me back to the genre. So, I've watched all his BYU classes and listened to his Writing Excuses podcasts and stuff like that. So I definitely really appreciate Brandon and what he's done for just the fantasy community as a whole. I think he's really pushed it forward in a lot of ways and challenged some of the status quo. So,
have you thought about writing yourself? Do you do any writing at all, or that's just not a side of the creative side that you've kind of pursued?
Well, like I said, it's like anything creative tickles my fancy.
Yeah.
I will say I haven't really delved deep into that. I'm fascinated by it. I think it's so interesting, and it's definitely something that I would love to do. My wife is always encouraging me to do it. She wants me to write a book. So, but I also know how much time that takes, and that it is a skill that needs to be honed and practiced, just like drawing, and with 3 little kids at home, and it's challenging to find extra time,
Well, yeah, for sure. And but what would the genre be if you were going to actually write? Would it be epic fantasy?
It would probably be epic fantasy. It could be historical fiction. That's the other genre that I really like. I really love Bernard Cornwell. He's definitely my favorite historical fiction author. But yeah, I would definitely consider doing something more along those lines. Something maybe Bronze Age, Stone Age, something a little bit earlier.
Interesting. So, yeah. Have you actually developed, I know this was a question earlier on in the chat, have you developed any maps for books that you'd like to write? In other words, would your process be to kind of almost develop the map first before you start writing?
It probably would be. Just because the way that I see stories is they're an outflow of the world that they're taking place in. As I'm drawing a map and adding rivers or adding a forest or, things like that, I almost feel like the story starts coming alive as I'm drawing, and I start seeing, well, I would place a city here because of this resource that's available here. And, that's the way that I see maps, is that it's just possibilities. The world building almost organically flows out of it to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting way to do it. I'm kind of curious if you ever do. I look forward to look forward to hearing about that because I'm with your wife. You got to jump in. I mean, let me put it this way: if you're reading 80 books, just read
Right.
40 and start writing one. I'm just saying.
Valid.
So I saw this snarky question from Joe, my friend in chat. He said, "How do you read 80 books with 3 little kids? Are you like a late night reader? Is that how you, or do you commute? How are you getting?"
I am an early morning reader.
Early morning reader. Okay.
Yeah, I was not a morning person until I had kids and it became necessity. So now every day I get up at 5, do some work, do some reading and stuff like that. So I do a lot of my reading, like actual physical books in the morning. And then I do listen to a decent amount of audiobooks. I'll often go cycling on my lunch break or something like that. So I or while I'm doing the dishes. So I volunteer to do the dishes now because I can get back to listening to my book. So yeah.
That reminds me, when my son, I tried to put him to bed and I'd end up gaming for 3 hours, but he was asleep on my shoulder.
Sure.
I got him to sleep.
You were with him.
I was with him. We were together. We were hanging out. One question I did see from Naz in chat was just curious about colors in your maps. Mm-hmm. I saw a comment as you were developing the 2 rivers where you thought about maybe coming back to and adding color. Is that still a plan? Are you going to try to do a variation of color in that map?
I would like to. I really like the pop that adding color or at least shading adds to the map. I might keep it still the sepia tones and stuff and add the shading, but it is definitely something that I would like to revisit. Even as I was working on getting the map posted on my website and stuff, I was looking at it and thinking, I kind of want to, bring it back into Procreate and start shading those mountains and stuff. So yeah, I would like to.
Yeah, I think everyone would love to see. Again, I can tell everyone loves the map, so it's like if you're going to do another variation of it, color. I would love to see what you come up with there. That would be fantastic. Well, by the way, I want to thank everyone for giving a call in to the show. Again, I want to thank you, Josh, very much for showing up and talking to us about your experience as a reader of the Wheel of Time, and for putting the time into this. And lastly, for sharing that map with all of fandom. That's extremely, again, kind and awesome. Hopefully those of you that are just watching, if you missed that earlier in the show, make sure you go to Josh's website. You can download a free copy of the map. And like you said, you can go get it printed if you want, or you can put it as a background, whatever you would like to do there. He was kind enough to share that with all of us. Tell your Wheel of Time fans to go download that. It's really great, and you can kind of learn about his process and how he developed this. And I think that'd be a lot of fun. And it's been great to get to know you. I'm looking forward to see. Yeah, well, great. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to seeing more work. And like I said, maybe Camelin someday. Someday maybe there'll be a map of Camelin. So
maybe.
Hey, everyone, we look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Good night from the Dusty Wheel, and as we say around here, smash to black.
If you want news and rumors.